Your seats, and if you need to continue to speak, please take your conversation outside or in the rain, whichever you prefer. And I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar, Chair of the Public Works Committee. This is, I'm joined by Mitch Englander, Councilmember. Are we expecting Councilmember Parks? Yes? No? Anybody check? Yes, we are expecting him?
Yeah.
You checked?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, somebody should check. Somebody on my staff should check. Can one of you guys check if Bernard Parks is coming? He is coming? Okay. As long as we know that he's coming. All right. We have a number of items today. If we could, with no objections, approve item 2 on consent. We have a public speaker card. I'm sorry, so we have to take that off consent. Councilmember Labange's office is here? Oh, yeah, okay. Just want to make sure you're here. Okay, and so let's go through the items. Number 1 is a street vacation, and I understand that Council District 1 is here today to speak about the item. Want to read the item into the record, please?
Item number 1 is a city engineer report relative to the vacation proceedings for Magnolia Avenue from Olympic Boulevard to approximately 130 feet southerly thereof.
Good afternoon, Guadalupe with Councilmember Ed Reyes' office. We've submitted an amendment to a condition.
Can everyone please keep your noise level down in here, please? Like I said, if you want to continue speaking, you could please take that outside. Thank you.
We've worked with the petitioner, and we're amending a condition in the Bureau of Engineering report. We've submitted the amendment. Everyone's in agreement regarding planting street trees.
Okay. Want to read the amendment to the record, please?
Sure. My name is Katie Clark with the Bureau of Engineering. We are amending Condition 13 of the Bureau of Engineering report to read that a minimum of 2 street trees be planted and tree covers be installed to the satisfaction of the Street Tree Division of the Bureau of Street Services along Olympic Boulevard on the sidewalk abutting the proposed vacation area and petitioner's property.
Great, thank you. Without objection, we'll adopt that item with the amendment.
Thank you.
Agreed, Mr.
Yes.
Englander? Okay. Adopted. Next item?
Item number 2 is a city engineer report relative to the vacation proceedings for San Fernando Road, west portion of easterly side at Cotter Street.
Councilmember Labange's office. Okay. Yes.
Edmund Yu from Public Works Engineering.
This was a consent item. I only pulled it because there was a speaker card by Councilmember Labange's office, so.
Yes, Lisa Schechter with Councilmember Tom Labange's office.
Okay.
There are 3 conditions we would like to have removed. Item number 6, 11, and 12 on the street vacation.
What does our engineer say?
The Bureau of Engineering is recommending the committee to go along with that recommendation from.
You okay pulling these conditions?
Yes.
Why no street lighting facilities?
In that area is kind of unimproved areas, and I think my understanding is that the council office on the main development of this project, they enter into an agreement with the current owner. If the current site is redeveloped, then they will put in everything in the future. But for now, everything is existing, so I think that's why we agree to keep this current condition out there. But if they ever redevelop the site, then everything would have to be installed.
Any trees being removed?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? No objections? So ordered. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, there's a minor correction. Instead of it being city engineer report, it's a Board of Public Works report relative to the donation of funds by Japanese Garden Mayor's Citizens Advisory Committee to the U.S.-Japan Council Earthquake Relief Fund.
Good afternoon, I'm Gene Green, Bureau of Sanitation. I'm the Director of the Japanese Garden in Van Nuys. This is a report that's gone to the Board of Public Works and approved Our Mayor's Citizens Advisory Group has requested that $10,000 be taken out of the Japanese Garden Trust Fund and given for the Japanese relief in Japan for the earthquake.
Thank you. And how much has been raised for this account so far, do you know?
How much has been raised for what?
How much has been raised so far in this account?
The Japanese Garden Trust Fund has about $340,000, so $10,000 is no problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
I got just one question. Sorry. What's the source of the funds? Where do you raise the money from?
The Japanese Garden, since about the first year, has rentals at the Japanese Garden for weddings, used to have receptions, photography, and we have an entry fee of $2 for seniors and $3 for adults. That all has gone into the Japanese Garden Trust Fund. It's operated by about 65 volunteers and docents, and that's how we raise our money.
Okay, so the spirit of the fund is meant for, to be spent sort of as a nonprofit type fund. It's managed by the city, but it's the spirit of which is supposed to it's not supposed to be used for maintenance or...
No, it's a mitigation. The garden is a mitigation for putting a Tillman reclamation plant.
That I'm aware of.
All funds there are supposed to be targeted for the enhancement and improvement of the Japanese garden and programs and things philanthropic like this here, Councilman.
Okay. And then just, I know we can't pick this up on video or over the mic, but by a show of hands of all those here in the audience, how many have actually been out to the site? It's one of the most beautiful, well-kept secrets in the city of L.A., and I encourage, there's only about, so for the record, 3 or 4 hands that went up out of maybe 50 or 60 in the room. I encourage all of you to go out and visit the site. It's spectacular, and it's really a jewel in the city, so I appreciate that.
And Councilman, I want to let you all know that we are ranked number 12 in the Western Hemisphere out of 300 public Japanese gardens, top 3% in the Western Hemisphere. So you're right, Councilman. So it's a gem that we should all appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And how did this come about? Who initiated this donation?
The Mayor's Citizens Advisory Group that tells us how to operate the gardens suggests this. They took a vote. They went to the Board of Public Works to ask for that to be approved to be sent to Japan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Without objection, we'll approve this item. Mr. Englander, thank you. So ordered. Next item.
Next item is item number 4. It's a motion by Council Members Labange and Garcetti relative to a non-motorized multimodal bridge project connecting Griffith Park and the Los Angeles River Bike Path to the North Atwater community. This item was waived by the Information and Technology Government Affairs Committee on July 15, and it was heard in the Ad hoc Rivers Committee, and it was approved on September 26. This item was also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Englander?
I had one on here. They were asking for fee waivers on this one.
Is there someone on staff or Councilmember Labange's office wanted to?
I just wanted to know how much we're talking about in terms of fees. It says here that City Council direct all relevant city departments to waive fees and process the bridge review and approval process expeditiously. Though I encourage expeditiously type processing. I don't know what that means anymore in the city, but what type of fees are we looking at?
My name is Larry Hsu from the Bureau of Engineering. I'm here with Carol Armstrong, also from the Bureau of Engineering, and with Omar Brownson from the River Revitalization Corporation. We put together a preliminary estimate of fees. We estimate the staff cost, the salary cost of $368,000, and also unidentified funding of $200,000 to perform the environmental work. Maintenance costs are estimated at $1 million over 10 years, the first 10 years of the bridge.
And so, I'm sorry, just asking, you're asking for these fees to be waived?
Yes.
1.5 million roughly?
Well, yeah, the $1 million over 10 years. The rest of the money, roughly $568,000, is for the implementation of the project. So.
Right. But has there been any work on this at all to try to identify possible fees to cover this? Who's going to cover the $368,000, for example, in staff time, or the $1 million over 10 years in maintenance? We're just giving this to the departments and asking them to assume
The 368 are salary monies, but the unidentified monies are for maintenance and for environmental work, and we're still working to identify.
Okay, so are you asking for those to be waived, or you're still looking to identify those funds? That's what
We're
the
looking,
motion requested that they all be waived.
yes, for the river revitalization question, but on the city side, we're still working to see if there's a way to, a source of funding for that.
I think as I'm reviewing this, there's a number of steps that still need to be taken. For example, it's requesting, as Mr. Englander pointed out, a waiver of fees. We don't know exactly what those are, expedited processing, in-kind services, acceptance of the bridge, the actual documentation that we need to do to accept the bridge, future maintenance. I'll recommend that we send this to the CAO for review and get a report back, if that's okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
May I?
Yes.
My name is Omar Brownson. I'm the Executive Director of the LA River Revitalization Corporation. We were created to assist in the implementation of the master plan. We're an independent nonprofit organization. This bridge has been on the books for about 25 years. We've identified a donor who's willing to contribute $4 million to build the bridge and gift it back to the city of Los Angeles. So we have taken on the responsibility of building this bridge in a very expeditious and efficient manner, including being very mindful of costs. So as we've brought forward this gift of about $4 million to build this bridge, what we've asked, because we're going to contribute back to the city of Los Angeles, that any sort of fees that would normally be associated with a bridge like this be waived for this purposes in order for this gift to be able to move forward and for this bridge to be given back to the city of Los Angeles.
As part of the $4 million, is there a carve-out of that to cover these costs and maintenance?
No, and that's part of what the total bridge cost is about $5 million, and so these are part of what we're looking to do is figure out how to reduce some of the costs so that we can continue to move forward with the bridge project. We're also looking at additional funds, to help close that gap, but these are some of the measures that would assist in the manner.
So it's sort of like giving out a horse for free. So if we get the horse, somebody's willing to donate a horse, well, then we've got to pay for stabling the horse and vet costs.
It's a leverage investment. So the city puts in $200,000. They're going to get close to $4 to $5 million in return. To the extent that we can continue to be creative and bringing additional resources to the river, which we are doing, we're certainly happy to look at how that fits into place.
So is there an option here to approve so you can move forward on a lot of these efforts without waiving the fees? Because right now, we're looking at about a $200 million structural deficit going into next year. We just got briefed on Monday on the financial status report. Things are bleak, and these departments are asking that we don't continue to do this from other committees, because then they bear the burden and they come back and say, well, we don't know how to cover these funds. So I know you need a lot of these things move forward. One of the first things is the city council to accept the bridge as a gift. Is that a bridge gift? No. But if we do that, there's a gap, and if we can just have that part come back to figure that out, that'll allow you to continue to move forward. Would that be acceptable, so we don't hold it up? I mean, I know the London Bridge was bought and sold 5 times, moved and transferred, and
I think the idea is that we want to continue to show the city's support of this project and show the goodwill that the staff has already taken on. So I think from the salary standpoint, a lot of the staff time has already been put in many ways. I think the big question right now is the $200,000.
And the maintenance
costs and the maintenance.
It is a very worthwhile project, and I'm sure the city would want to accept it and move forward. It's just that we need to dot all our I's and cross our T's and make sure we have all the proper details before us prior to sending it to full council. That's our responsibility as a committee. So we just want to have that information before we send it forward.
Yeah, and I don't want to hold you up, but we have a financial policy that was passed as well 2 years ago by the City of Los Angeles, which is anytime we take new land, or in this case a bridge, I guess would fall into that same type of structure, or create a new program, we have to identify a funding revenue stream rather than fee waivers. So try to adhere to that policy. I would ask that you come back just on that element, and that you can move forward on everything else. Show good faith and accept the bridge as the gift.
What did the committee do, the ad hoc river committee? you know?
It approved the motion as,
They approved it to move forward?
yeah. I mean, I think, we've worked very closely with the city to identify the matrix as is presented, and trying to be clear and sort of transparent, and we were conservative as well in terms of these numbers.
Okay. We'll do this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, on behalf of the LA River Project Office, we were established when the City Council adopted the master plan back in 2007, and we in the Bureau of Engineering, our job is to sort of leverage outside resources and get all the departments to work together to attract funding. And when the master plan established the LA River Revitalization Corporation, this is exactly the kind of thing that we wanted to see them do. And so the way we see it in the course of our business is we would be applying for grant applications and things like that, so putting money up front in order to get a return. And so we see this as a very exciting opportunity from a private individual to give money toward river revitalization. So we'd like to do what we can within the city process so that this will be a success and we can attract more projects like it in the future. So we really would welcome any input that you have and how we might be able to work together across the city departments to make this faster.
Why don't we take the approach I think that the chairman suggested, if we could then have, and take it all at the same time with the CAO report. So, because there are other items on here, responsibility for the bridge's future maintenance, we need to hear back from Bureau of Street Services, which the CAO will have them weigh in on as well, and at least have the real discussion once we have the report back.
So the motion will be that we come back in 30 days with a CAO report that will comment on fee waivers, expediting the process, in-kind services, acceptance of the bridge, and documentation necessary for that, future maintenance, including that but not limited to that, and anything else the CEO may want to report on those items. And we'll be back in 30 days. Yes, sir. 15 days. Why 15 days? The CAO is too busy.
15 days.
Why 15 days?
Great, thank you.
No, why 15 days? I'm not
I think
there
part
yet.
of it, again, we are moving on a fast-track basis. We're working on sort of all fronts to keep this process. Part of keeping the costs low is making sure that we can move the process forward quickly. And so,
Is there anything that's going to not happen in 30 days?
I mean, everything is timed in terms of the sequencing of our drawings, our approvals, in order for us to keep.
Where's the CEO? Where's the CAO? Anybody here from the CAO? Okay, give them 15 days. They're not here.
Thank you.
15 days.
Oh, that's our city day.
Thank you. 15 days. Done. Next item. No objection?
None.
So order next item.
Mr. Chair, would you like to take items 5 and 6 together? They're the same council file.
Yeah, number 5 and 6 together?
Okay, item 5 and 6 is a report from the President of the Board of Public Works, who is also the concurrent chair of the Downtown Art Walk Task Force, relative to the recommendations that will ensure and protect public safety during the reoccurring downtown LA Art Walk.
Welcome. We are here as a result of a motion from council regarding the artwork, which has been very successful from a number of ways. First off, promoting the arts. Second, it's been an economic development boon for downtown Los Angeles. Third, it's bringing more people to rediscover downtown Los Angeles. Fourth, it's giving more work to our LAPD and our fire department. And it's been very successful, unfortunately, because of an incident, not to say that the art walk was the cause of the unfortunate incident where an infant was tragically hit by a car. It did bring to light the need for more safety in the area, and we made some changes at the last art walk. Board of Public Works, Andrea Alarcon, number of departments, my office, Councilwoman Perry's office. And I think it worked fairly well for that day, that time, that one event. And it did extend the footprint a bit larger, and I think that is a good thing. It allowed people to see more of the area of downtown, et cetera. But we did need to come back and finalize and get some more concrete regulations in place so that this event will not be a victim of its own success. So here we are, and we're ready and willing and able to listen to your report, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Very good. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Englander, Andrea Alarcon, President of the Board of Public Works. But for purposes of this report, I am the Chair of the Downtown Art Walk Stakeholders Task Force. The report before you pertains to the downtown LA Art Walk and is in response to two things, as you noted, Mr. Chair, a tragic incident and a council motion. The Downtown Art Walk has been in place for several years, is held on the second Thursday of every month, and has very organic and local roots. In the past year, however, the popularity and the footprint of the Art Walk has grown significantly. Currently, it's estimated that this monthly reoccurring event attracts anywhere between 15 to 30,000 people per event date. Tragically, at the July 14th Art Walk, a vehicle struck pedestrians, killing a 57-day-old infant. In the aftermath of that incident, there was significant media attention and public outcry for the city's intervention and public safety assessment of the event. On July 29th, as you noted, a motion was jointly introduced by yourself, Councilmember Huizar, and Perry, directing the establishment of an Art Walk Stakeholders Task Force. Since that time, the task force was created and now includes over 75 members representing residents, businesses, bids, and numerous other stakeholders. For your reference, there is attached in the report a very detailed listing of the over 75 members of the stakeholders task force. The consensus of the stakeholders is that the overarching goal is to reduce the concentration of pedestrian traffic during the Art Walk, primarily from the Art Walk core and secondarily from the Art Walk perimeter. The definitions of the Art Walk core and the perimeter are also contained in your report. While the primary goal of the task force is to protect the public safety by improving traffic flow, other concerns discussed amongst the stakeholders include protecting the art-based and organic nature of the Art Walk, maximizing the local economic benefit of the Art Walk, protecting the residents' interests in noise reduction and property access, and ensuring full cost recovery for city services, to name a few. Having taken all of these issues into consideration, working in direct conjunction with the two affected council offices and all affected city departments, the recommendations contained in this report were developed and essentially do the following. One, they limit the types of activities that create concentrated pedestrian activity during the Art Walk. And two, ensure full cost recovery for city services deployed in support of the Art Walk and all related activities. I'm joined here by members of all of the city departments that are deployed in support of the Art Walk, and we are happy to entertain and answer your questions.
Well, let me begin with some questions. So, primarily, the report recommends where temporary change of use permits can be given so that we allow some activity within the core, but better regulates an overconcentration of, let's say, the food trucks who get on the parking lots. So if we adopt this, what would be the impact on the food trucks who are now congregating in the parking lots?
So the regulations as established, I think the consensus again was also to absolutely prohibit the use of open-air parcels within the Art Walk core for the purposes of concessions, which would include the food truck concessions.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be moved outside of the core to the perimeter, and they would have access to apply for change of use permits in the perimeter, but just not in the core.
And this is being done in order to avoid the spillage of pedestrians into the sidewalk and possibly into the street, causing safety issues,
right.
correct?
So
Because that's
if
for the
we want
most
to
number of
specifically
people.
talk about the food trucks, what we've noticed and what we've discussed in these stakeholder meetings is that the food trucks have for instance, a Twitter following of approximately 20,000 people. Ever since the food trucks joined the Art Walk activities, the attendance and the popularity of the Art Walk itself has grown and exceeded over 30,000 people in some instances. Because the food trucks are so concentrated on one parking lot or one parcel, that they create spillover into the public right-of-way, into the streets, into the sidewalks. There are various vendors who also join in those concessions along the sidewalk and then create very limited access for pedestrians to flow.
But it's not to say that there will be no concessions or food trucks in the core. It's just according to the formula, there might be less, depending upon it. Or would this prohibit any from the core? From the four, is the four the four-block, is the core the four-block area?
From
Yeah.
3rd to 7th.
it's a 4-block.
Spring and Main, yes.
So it will prohibit food trucks and concessions from that area?
On open-air parcels. So
Open-air
that would
parcels.
be a parcel that doesn't have an existing building structure. But if there is a building structure and there is, for instance, an art gallery or a retail space that wants to host an art showcase, they would require a change of use permit. But because they're in a core and because they're in a building, an existing building structure, it would not be considered an open-air parcel. Therefore, they would not be prohibited from getting a change of use permit. However, outside of the core, open-air parcels, i.e. parking lots, namely parking lots, would only be, food trucks and those types of concessions would only be permitted in the perimeter.
Thank you. And also, that night when we made these changes, I was being interviewed by the media, and there were accusations being made that we did this to not allow the food trucks in the core because we wanted to support the local restaurants who are already there, and I pointed to all the restaurants who had lines flowing out. I mean, there's a huge demand for their service that night, so it's not like we were trying to get more business to those restaurants. It's just a matter of safety. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, and many others, it worked out better where we were able to extend the footprint of the actual art walk, so it allowed a bigger, more spread out art walk rather than overly concentrated in that 4-block area. My other question is on the special events. If we categorize this event as a special event, they would be required to pay fees. How much are they? Who's going to pay them? And on our end, we don't cover the full. The special event fee does not cover the full cost of the event. How much will the city be paying for this event?
Well, based on our experience in the past 2 months, we've calculated what those costs would be, which are in the range of $40,000 per event. $22,000 of which is attributable to the police department and various other segments of, so Department of Transportation is $3,000, for instance, but the total is approximately $40,000. So moving forward with defining the art walk as a special event, or having at least that the council find that the art walk is a special event, which under the provisions of the special event ordinance, it is. The special event ordinance defines any event which requires the deployment of city services above and beyond normal levels of deployment. This event requires deployment of the fire department, the police department, Department of Transportation, street services, and building and safety above and beyond their normal levels of deployment, and it is for the purposes of an event. So it fits within the parameters of the already existing ordinance. So the finding would help the city to recover its costs for those services.
Would it be a complete recovery, $40,000, or?
Well, under the ordinance, interestingly, also, there is a differentiation between a commercial and non-commercial event. This event, because of its nonprofit nature, and because it is open to the public free of charge and without restriction, would be characterized, at least based on our preliminary assessment, as a non-commercial event. By virtue of the LAPD's policy, and the police department can speak to their policy more thoroughly, but by virtue of their existing policy, non-commercial events are not charged for police services. However, all other costs for services will be recovered through the special event policy.
And how much do we anticipate? So
it's about $15,000.
About $15,000 of the $40,000. And the city, we've allocated every year through our budget process a budgeted amount to supplement the special events, so we'll cover the rest of it.
Right.
Okay.
So it's actually, just so that we're clear and you're clear, it's $15,000 per event.
Per event.
So
yeah.
if it's a monthly reoccurring event, it's $15,000 times 12. There are provisions in the special event ordinance that allow for two types of subsidies, a citywide subsidy, but also a council office subsidy. The council offices have, both your office and Councilmember Perry have already provided to support last month's Art Walk council office subsidies. And so at this juncture, I think we are supporting that this event be added onto the citywide special event list and be under the jurisdiction of the CLA's office.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else that Captain Chamberlain or our LA Fire Department would like to add before I go to public speakers? If you guys could stay up there, if you don't mind. We have some questions from Ms. Janglander, and then we'll go to public speakers. But if you guys don't mind staying up there, we'll have the public speaker go to the open mic. Ms. Janglander.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for doing this, for coming together. It's real simple to take the easy way out and say there's been a tragedy. It's really simple to take the easy way out and look for an excuse and say we just can't afford to do this anymore, rather than put together a task force of all the stakeholders, the council offices, and say this is something the community wants. This gets people out of their homes to socialize, to appreciate outdoors, to appreciate the arts, and that's not easy to do. It's really simple to go the other direction and say we just can't allow this, we just can't fund it, we can't work together because another tragedy can happen. We have, I think, the largest, if not close to the largest gathering of food trucks in my district, twice a week. And we have anywhere from 40 to 60 food trucks twice a week on a very small block. And we have anywhere between 8,000 to 12,000 people twice a week show up every week. And it's interesting because the community is really, I won't even say divided, mostly supportive. And it's been a blessing to get people out of their homes and interact with their community and their neighbors. And there hasn't been a lot of culture in Granada Hills to get people to come to Chatsworth Street and Zelza, as there has been the last several months. So I applaud your efforts in this. We're really looking to your guidance as well in trying to figure out how you guys have come up with ideas to solve these problems, because we have issues very similar, be it that nobody has gotten hurt yet, and which is great. We've been, I won't say blessed, but lucky to date, because with that type of pedestrian traffic, we don't have any DOT officers out there, certainly not a lot of LAPD, because there isn't the funds to do it. This is not considered a special event. It's a spontaneous event that has just occurred, as was mentioned, just by Twitter and followers and people getting out looking for something to do. So I'm looking to this and very, very interested, and that's why I've got some questions geared towards that effort. And, we recognize that we've got the special event fee that can do it. This is an event, again, that's twice a week, where this one is once a month, but nonetheless, it's not an annual event. So this is an ongoing event. And so there has to be an ongoing revenue stream that we have to look towards. How do you regulate if a food truck wants to park on a city street? And I don't know if it's a problem here. I'm not that familiar with this particular event. What do you do in that case?
And actually, food trucks are regulated by the County Department of Public Health.
Right.
And they have been a stakeholder and been present at all of our meetings. And according to their regulations, a food truck is allowed to park on a city street for no more than 1 hour, unless and then at that point they become subject to a variety of other regulations and often get cited. They asked if they needed to be here for this meeting, and I actually...
There's a food truck network. We've brought them in. We put together a similar task force. We brought in the county health department, and according to county health, they can stay for more than the hour if they have a bathroom permit.
Yes, if they have a signed letter.
A signed letter from a local, so all the food trucks have that. That's been done.
Okay.
So we've got 60 food trucks with signed bathroom letters. The businesses want this. And so maybe this is altogether similar but very different than the art walk. But the businesses want, so they've written letters and given them consent. So they can now have more than the hour. And again, it goes back to, it's easy to regulate. It's easy to put up no parking signs. It's easy to say no parking for more than an hour. But people want these things in Los Angeles. And it's one of the great things of LA that not only that we have these types of spontaneous events, but the culture that comes along with it. So we're trying to figure out a way to protect it. And forgive me if I'm trying to borrow your ideas on this, but we're really trying to think outside the box. We've been working with the chamber. The neighborhood councils have gotten very involved. Everybody wants to make this work. And you guys are about to make this work and the artwork and make it safely. And you're doing so in taking public safety into the first consideration, which I support you in that, and I think it's fantastic. I applaud you, not just support you, on doing that. In looking at this, full cost recovery, who do you charge? Do you have a host? Is there a host that promotes this and puts it on? And
I think that's one of the largest points of contention amongst the event sponsors that we would define as the event sponsors. The Art Walk, there is a nonprofit organization called the Downtown LA Art Walk, but they have very limited resources and have some concerns about, and so I think we've got some comment cards, and they will articulate their position.
Yeah, he's here now. Okay, so you have a nonprofit with limited resources, and it's, I would imagine, very difficult to raise funds from the people who are the concessionaires, if you will, and the food trucks. They could legally park on a city street, again, if they have the letter, for as long as they want to. So it doesn't sound like there's a way to really raise money to cover the fees from a nonprofit or from, you want to take a seat at the table?
Yes, I think there's actually, there's some opportunity. There are the bids at the table, and some of the business owners and representatives of the business community understand that the city is facing a financial crisis, and based on my conversations with them, are also willing to come back to the table, work directly with the Art Walk nonprofit organization to see how they can contribute to offsetting the fees, because the businesses really do reap financial benefit by virtue of this monthly event. They look forward to it to make their bottom line.
And who cleans up after the event? Does the sanitation come in and do street sweeping and pick up the trash, or does the nonprofit bring in volunteers? And if you want to,
yeah, local bids actually have their street cleanup, but sanitation does not come in on this event.
The local bid.
if you could state your name, I'm sorry.
My name is Joe Moeller, Executive Director of the Downtown Los Angeles Art Walk, as well as downtown resident and small business owner. And the historic core business improvement district in the past 7 years has spent not one penny over and above its additional cleaning bill. Since this administration took over in December of 2010, we have been the only organization to make a contribution to waste management on Art Walk night, and we pay the delta of the difference between the bid's normal service provision and the cleanup on Art Walk.
And you're not, the nonprofit is called what?
The 501c3 is the Downtown Los Angeles Art Walk.
And where do you raise money from?
Historically, our only revenue stream has been a small contribution from property owners participating or not participating in the bid. In efforts to supplement that, my administration, which is myself and one other person, have been fundraising to the best of our efforts.
So it's tough out there to raise money.
One of the challenges, candidly speaking, in light of the regulation is prior to this, we were able to activate in a non-threatening, harmful way to the community sponsorship in parking lots. So American Express or Red Bull had a footprint where they would provide samples or various brand activations. In light of this regulation, we are restricted from our ability to take that corporate activation and put it in front of the core audience.
I see. And then how do you limit the number of, it says here, limitation on the number of actual food trucks. How do you limit that? You limit it? Is it a first come, first served basis? How do you do that?
So the Department of Building and Safety and the Fire Department work jointly in issuing what have been known as these temporary special use permits, and occupancy load is determined by the Fire Department, and I'll defer to them to explain how they calculate that.
What we do is they'll come to us and express...
State your name for the record.
I'm sorry. Battalion Chief Michael Bowman, Commander of Public Safety. They'll come to...
Who's they? The food truck?
Food truck.
Or the parking lot owner?
Right.
The permit, so typically, at least in this instance, the food truck vendors are led by 1, 2, or however many people. They lease, they enter into a lease agreement with the property owner, the parking lot owner, for use that one evening. So the permittee is actually the food truck or mobile food truck vendor organizer.
That is correct. They'll come to that being the food truck, whether it's one person or multiple. They'll come to the fire department expressing an open air that's on the perimeter of Art Walk, as stated, and they'll identify a parking lot open air, and they'll come to us with a plot plan of trucks. We'll go ahead and do a formula, and with the calculation of what's taken away with food trucks, tables and chairs, or whatever their footprint's going to be, we will calculate that out and then apply the 15 square foot per person and establish an occupant load.
Okay.
And that will be
And none of these are on private streets, these are all on
parking lots.
So how will you pay the $15,000?
I'd like to add to that historically in the 7-year history of Art Walk, not a single food truck, with the exception of one $75 donation last month, has ever made a financial contribution to the waste management, security, or any component of the Art Walk organization. These third-party organizers, as we describe it, come under the umbrella, reap a profit, and leave, which we have no problem with.
Okay, but there's a way to regulate it and control it, and that's what it's given you, so it seems to be working.
So
Have you had
if I could just add
absolutely.
one very important piece of this puzzle. So there are 3 recommendations contained in this report. Recommendation number 2 is that council make the finding that any change of use permittee on an open air parcel, which would apply to the food truck vendors, that they are defined as a special event themselves. So each of those, in and of themselves, create their own special event, and they will be responsible for their piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So the Art Walk will be the overarching special event, but each of the parking lots create their own special event and will pay their portion of the
Each
fee.
parking lot, but not each food. Okay.
Not each food truck,
Right.
each
Do
parking.
you have a situation around the perimeter where you have food trucks parking on city streets at all?
Not anymore. I think historically there were some concerns, but both council offices intervened and mitigated the business concerns and negotiated to have them move to the parking lots. However, over time, the popularity obviously grew and more food trucks began to congregate.
It's one of those solutions we've identified, and this, in our particular case, was actually moving these to a big open-air parking lot, which this now then would solve that issue because you've established these guidelines, and that's very helpful. When it's just on city street, it's really difficult to get your arms around because you don't have these options. And so I appreciate that you've done all the work on this, and this very well could be the next solution for us as well.
So why don't we turn it over to Mr. Moeller and start your public comment period, and I'm sure we're going to have more questions of you, so if you could just state whatever you'd like to state.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Art Walk, hats off to the task force. They've been very successful in executing the safety mitigation steps. So successful, in fact, that this is no longer a safety emergency. This has turned into a financial conversation. That being said, as someone who's asked to be part of an undefined group to pay for an unspecified amount of city fees, we would respectfully like to ask the Commission to ask the task force to go back to committee and publish with the same level of specificity that they have regarding occupancy loads, how those fees will be applied, what portion they will be distributed amongst the permit pullers, and in the example of the 15 to 30,000 person range, it can't possibly be the same cost for city services. We are willing and able to work together as a community to be responsible for those costs. We are asking for more than 4 days, which is when the Commission would vote on this, to allow us to understand those numbers, which we still have not received, and to come up with a financial plan that allows and enables us in the community to meet those requests every month.
So as you both very well know, the special event permitting process is essentially a 2-step process. You submit an application, and we at the Bureau of Street Services compile and collect the cost estimates from the city departments. We relay that information over to the event sponsor. They pay their permit fees and submit all of the required documentation. We issue their permit. After the fact, there is an actual cost reconciliation process whereby we reconcile the actual costs with the estimated costs, issue a refund where necessary, and recover any costs not provided for. We held the most recent stakeholders meeting yesterday afternoon. We informed the stakeholders we gave them copies of this report. We informed them of the recommendations. We advised them to submit special event applications online, which typically take less than 5 minutes to submit, so that we can get them their cost estimate, their very detailed cost estimate, in a timely manner. As of yet, we have not received one application.
Yeah, two quick questions on that, if I could then. On that, though, on the commercial event, the idea that it's come from whatever that might be, $40,000 estimated fees to $15,000, I wasn't aware on the special event fee waivers. We have block parties that would fall under this that are put on by the Kiwanis every year. We have certainly parades. Parades I know fall under a different category than special events, but the block parties don't. but we have block parties where under the special event fee waiver, and these are put on by nonprofits, they have to pay full cost recovery. We have one in particular, we have two in particular, in fact. One, which is the annual 4th of July event, which is the largest 4th of July event in the city of LA, 50 to 60,000 people, which is in our district.
How long is the fireworks show?
The fireworks show is 3 minutes longer than any other fireworks show in the city of LA. But the point of that is that they are on the citywide list. They do get the 50% reduction. What they don't get is any other discount under non-commercialized event. It's always been ruled back by DOT and LAPD and the fire department that they have to pay for all those costs, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's open to the public or not, whether it's commercial or not. It was always ruled by Public Works and others that we've got the documentation coming back to our office saying that's the only available means. There's two sources of funds for special event fee waivers. It's the citywide and then the council district specific, but there's not a reduction that says because it meets these certain qualifications or criteria, they don't have to reimburse costs to the city for other services. I've never, that's new to me.
So you are correct in the fact that there are only two available funds for special event subsidies, the citywide special event fund and the council office subsidies. However, it's not necessarily a fee waiver. It is by definition in the ordinance. There is a differentiation between a commercial and a non-commercial event. The police department and its police commission have adopted three varying policies over the course of the entire time frame that this special event ordinance has been active. At this juncture, I believe their policy is to charge zero for non-commercial events and charge for actual costs for commercial events. So I'm happy to work with you. I'm familiar with the Shepherd of the Hill fireworks event, and moving forward, I'm happy to work with you to figure out exactly how we can get them defined as a non-commercial event. I know it's sponsored by a church.
Actually,
and
just
it's
in
open
terms
to
of
the public free of charge.
rather than isolating any one event, can we get, not to hold this up, as a separate report back, what the police commission has identified then as events or non-special events? If we can get that language back on those qualifications, not as part of this document or this item, but as a separate item, if we can ask that to come back to the next Public Works Commission.
Yeah, and actually it wouldn't be
Committee.
us that would be the report back. It would be the police department, Lieutenant Ray Garvin, who is the head of the police department's contracting unit. He knows full well the evolution of the police department's policy, and he's actually the one who calculates the police costs and makes the final determination as to what event is commercial versus non-commercial.
Good to hear. No, I appreciate that. So we'll look into that further. And then the last thing was, on the citywide event list, it was my understanding that that's an annual list that is presented as part of the budget report, as part of the city budget, the annual budget, and that it identifies by dollar amount those events listed, and it can only be changed annually unless one event comes on, off, another one goes on. But as part of this report, you were asking that this event be added to the citywide
So
event.
it's not a formal recommendation of the report, but my recommendation to the chair and to Councilmember Perry and to yourself, it would be to provide the added subsidy if it is the will of the two members involved. The citywide special event list is actually managed and administered by the CLA's office, so Paul Smith can speak to that process.
We are in the process right now, Paul Smith, CLA. We are in the process right now of seeking from all the 15 council offices amendments to the list, add-ons, takeoffs, adjustments. We've received comments back from some of them, but not all yet. When we do, we will compile that list again, resubmit it to the council for approval. It will be the annual list. Now, a citywide event has to be an event that is of significance to 3 or more council offices. It has to be, to get a subsidy, it has to have a non-profit sponsor, and I don't know how that works in this case, but City 14 has already made an official request that Art Walk be incorporated on the citywide list. So it's our intent to we have already estimates of costs. The quirk in this one is that this is an event that happens every month. So we'd have to figure out how we would manage that as a citywide event that occurs regularly over the course of the year.
Well, it's just one event that takes long recesses
Yeah.
for the month.
And the ordinance really said there's only two places where you can have
So in
recurring events.
Not to take up everybody's time on this, this part, that element then will come back. I didn't realize we're working on a revised citywide list. Will be brought into that list that comes back to council. That's what I was trying to say.
Yes, and I'm happy to sit
Oh,
down
no,
with you and run through the special events ordinance. It's very complicated.
That part I'd like to hear more about.
And we're happy to.
So perhaps we can do that just offline. We don't have the report come back to the committee. Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, we'll also participate in that, because the ordinance really is two things, the permitting part and the subsidy part, and it's
Right,
bifurcated.
And the subsidy part, that the citywide list, though, that's being amended separately, is not
Yeah,
part of this
right.
motion.
Right, and we're working with your staff on that, too.
Got it. Okay.
Quite honestly, as Art Walk's representation and community member, our concern is that even with the subsidy, if what's left exceeds our budget, it will cripple and ultimately kill Art Walk. One of the things the task force, myself included, has yet to emphasize, it's clearly not listed in these documents, is what is that impact to the mother, the small mom and pop business in the community who makes their entire profit that night? If our organization goes out of business, and collectively we lose the only entity that's acting as a liaison between the community, between the organizational entities involved, and between the constituents, what happens? And the cost then, I would suggest, raise exponentially without our organization being involved. What we're asking for today is a longer window to work together in the community to figure out those costs with more clear definition and to be responsible for them.
So, on one end, our President of the Public Works Commission is saying we could do this within 4 days, then we sort out the costs, et cetera, or there's a request to postpone that, but where will that money come from? So,
moving forward for this October Art Walk, without the finding that these are special events and recovering costs through the event sponsors, the city would bear the burden of those costs. Either we would be asking each of the departments involved to absorb those costs, or we would have council members, again, subsidize through their funds those costs, or the departments would not deploy, not support the event, which would create a public safety hazard, or we would have police monitoring the entire event, which I think all of those options really don't seem viable at this juncture.
I'd like to add for the record, prior to the task force being involved, the only officiating organization participating in Art Walk was LAPD, and we were incident-free for 7 years.
yeah, but I must add, when I saw the Art Walk growing, I knew it would get to a point where at some point the city had to recoup its costs. So it couldn't go on forever, and the fact of the matter is that the city has been subsidizing this event, and it's been unfair, or it hasn't been consistent with other events that are required to go through the process, are required to be designated special event or not. And this was kind of like a lot of things that happened in downtown, just out there. Nobody was really enforcing any of our rules, and it was bound to get to this point. And
Fully support a regulated environment where the city is being reimbursed. We would like a longer window than 4 days to make that determination. Especially in light of the task force indication that the crowd varies from 15,000 to 30,000. I think that's a big enough window to merit additional discovery so that we can identify a cost structure. These are very educated, experienced organizations who can each put forth an estimated budget for a 15...
If I could, I'm not quite sure what you're asking. So you're asking that you move forward with the next event, and it's supposed to be in 4 days? Without having to pay any of the fees?
The next Art Walk is scheduled for October 13th, which is the following Thursday, which is particularly why we asked that they, yesterday afternoon, submit their special event application, because we know already what the costs are for this event,
Right.
and we could kick those costs back to them very, very quickly. But yet, we have not yet received an application.
Well, that's an issue. And
Business owners are concerned that if they pull that permit, that there'll be negative money. So the food truck operators make X. Their concern is that when the final bill comes, Y will be greater than X, and they'll be out of business and have no money in their pocket to pay the city.
And is there any reason that since it sounds like there's been a tremendous effort to bring a task force together with all the stakeholders and outreach and think outside the box, I try to identify various, I won't call them loopholes, but opportunities and special funds. It sounds like the President Board of Public Works has been working diligently and with all the departments to identify ways to bring and lower those fees to make it a safe environment, to continue this effort. And that's what I'm hearing here today.
Without question, the efforts of everyone to my right.
But nobody else on the other end is willing to take a risk and pull an application or...
Not with all due respect, that's inaccurate. What we'd like to do is table the special event designation for the next Art Walk.
But then you don't have the resources of public safety and others to make sure that the community is protected.
Not accurate. Within the framework of the last recommendations, everyone like myself who will be submitting tentatively our application for a change of use permit is required to have a fire safety officer as part of that, so you'll have fire department on site. In speaking with LAPD, they have indicated that in worst case scenario that they will still be on site with no bill to the Art Walk organization for traffic management. So the system that was in place, albeit inadequate in July prior to the uncausally related incident, will be in place. So what we'd like to do is say, before you give us this bill that somebody knows but we don't know, give us time to see what the number is and respond so that in the November Art Walk, if we are deemed a special event, we have more than 72 hours to respond.
Well, you never really know the actual number until you have the event. That's one of the difficulties. So you've got to go base it on guesstimates.
But I think if we had more than 4 days to come up to have that conversation, we would produce a more sustainable result.
And so we have a couple of responses to that, but with all due respect to Mr. Moeller, this stakeholders process has been ongoing for several months, and at the outset, one of the primary concerns and topics of discussion was cost recovery. We all knew the direction we were headed. There was full notice of every single meeting. Joe Moeller was present and accounted for at all of those meetings. When the last month's recommendations came forward, we were clear that the 2 council offices were going to subsidize this month, but moving forward, the following month's Art Walk was going to have to be paid for by the event sponsors. So the notion that there is only 4 days' notice, I think, is a bit insincere. But I think the fire department did want to add some comments.
Yes, the fire department never in any way stated that this event would be unsupervised. And the fire department has, being very experienced in putting on special events throughout this entire city, has told the Art Walk, specifically Joe Moeller, that we encourage you to manage your own event. You have not taken that responsibility. You put that back on the city. So the city, in good faith, has wanted this event to go forward. But if you had a coordinated effort and handled this event as a total Art Walk, and you decide which each individual venue would be responsible for whatever cost recovery that would be necessary, then you could define that in your own event. And that's what we have said to you on several occasions and on last month.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
And my response to that is, if anyone in this room can collect money from the food trucks, please tell me how.
Okay. Let's, at this point, hear from CD9. Stephanie's here. There you are. I didn't see you. It's like I saw your card, but I didn't see you here.
Good afternoon, Councilman. My name is Stephanie Mackian, representing Councilwoman Perry's office. I've been representing her on the task force since we joined, and I just wanted to add that the Councilwoman is in support of these recommendations. Her primary goal, of course, for the event is to have a safe event, and I think these recommendations will get us to that point. These past 2 months have been a great improvement to the previous months, but her second goal is cost recovery to the city. So I think we're heading in the right direction. And on her behalf, I would like to recommend approval of the recommendations.
One last thing to close, if I could. From what I'm hearing, everybody is on the same page, that everybody wants to move forward and work together. And I started off with that, not knowing where the conversations and not knowing the history of this specific art walk in terms of outside discussions in the task force, and saying it's real easy to close up shop. It's real easy to say, we can't do this anymore. We have a responsibility to the public safety, and we just can't afford to do it, and we can't find a way to do it. But that's not what occurred here. What occurred here was a lot of city staff, city resources, council office, public works commissioners taking the time to work with the community and the stakeholders, and have done a great job, I think, in identifying all the issues of concern in public safety and cost recovery. Cost recovery, it was too high. So they came up with the ideas to say, well, here's ways we can make it reasonable and palatable to be fair, which then the council offices, because it was taking some time to put all this together, reached into their own pocket on their discretionary funds to continue to have yet another art walk because it wasn't yet worked out. It sounds like it's close, but it's not quite there. So I support the recommendations. I think they've done a phenomenal job, and everybody looking to work together. I don't know. I think you'll be back. There's always going to be those unintended consequences. It's refreshing to hear that there's some good ideas out there that you guys have all come up with that then I can also bring back to my district on similar issues of concern. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. If I could just add one, separate and apart from this report and the recommendations contained therein, the City Attorney's Office has some comments on a parallel path that they would like to recommend that the council move forward with.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. And thank you, Commissioner Alarcon. We would recommend that the committee ask our office to provide an ordinance clarifying the authority of building and safety to issue temporary change of use permits. This will, in effect, just make the ordinance crystal clear in achieving what the goal of those documents are.
We're going to ask that this item be heard in council on Tuesday. If we make those directions and the event is Thursday, could we still apply the rules without having that ordinance?
We're not recommending that we change the process that's currently taking place. We just want to be able to come back with something that allows for the change of use permits to apply here and in other situations. As Councilmember Englander mentioned, this is happening in other parts of the city. Other events may come up. This is a good time to really verify the code.
Okay, sounds good. Well, without objection, we're going to adopt this report. And while Mr. Moeller brought up some very good points, the fact of the matter is that we do have to be consistent with other special events. We have to work through this together. Last month, we were on a shoestring. The city stepped up when CD9, CD14 came up with the funds. We're on a shoestring once again, and this time we're asking the nonprofit to take the risk this time, and as we get through this, we'll iron it out, and hopefully in November it'll be all clear to everybody. But we're trying to get through this together. It's a very successful event. Given the economic situation of the city, we have to be consistent and recoup our costs, but at the same time, we do want to promote more of these events, because the fact of the matter is there's less of these events now from 4 or 5 years ago when we didn't get as stringent with our public events. But now I've heard of many great events being canceled, and we don't want this one to be canceled, but at the same time, we do need to recoup our costs. So we'll move forward in that direction. If I could ask for this item be placed on the Tuesday agenda, council, if that's okay? Clerk? And then we will also direct the city attorney to, what was that you told us to do?
To provide an ordinance clarifying the authority of building and safety to issue temporary change of use permits.
There you go. We'll add that as well. Without objection?
Mr. Chair, just for clarification, do you want the board, the public work, to report back to this committee later in the future date?
And actually, if I can just clarify, it's not,
Oh.
the communication is not from the Board of Public Works. The communication is from me as an individual, because the Board of Public Works did not review or vote on the report. I was acting as the chair of the Stakeholders Committee, so if we can just clarify for the purposes of the agenda, that the communication is from the chair of the ArtWalk Stakeholders.
Okay, good. This didn't go through the Public Works
The
Commission?
full board, no.
Oh, I thought it did. I was wondering earlier, too, if you were at the Public Works Commission and you were chairing that, who was testifying for your report to yourself? So that makes sense. That cleared everything up for me. Yes, but you're pointing out to another recommendation, which is to have Ms. Alarcon, the President of the Board of Public Works Commission, to report back to this committee on how the October 13th Outwalk progressed and all the other financial issues involved.
Absolutely, and actually, it's not a formal recommendation, but in the discussion of the report, I did note that we would be coming back to this committee as well as full council with final formal recommendations on how to codify the actions and limitations for permitting moving forward in perpetuity.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any other items? Any other items? Nope. No public comment cards. Meeting adjourned. So ordered.